I am Carol Angela Davis, and welcome to Impact News. We're going to begin with a little commentary, folks, because there's a whole lot of commentary out there about the fact that the insurrection is ongoing. Okay, people still say the election was stolen. They are still claiming the election was stolen. Still claiming. All the evidence in the world doesn't mean a thing. We know the insurrection is ongoing by their actions, especially if you just look at the midterm elections. The question we have to ask ourselves is this: if no one is above the law, if that's our tenet, no one is above the law, then shouldn't everyone be held accountable, including the Supreme Court justices who clearly are advancing the agenda of the alt-right? And it's the alt-right that's putting forth the insurrection, folks. They're not advancing the agenda of the general public. They're not even upholding precedent. I mean, come on. You got Samuel Alito doing things like leaking opinions and cavorting with the far right over a period of years until they finally got the decision they wanted on contraception in Hobby Lobby and abortion in Dobbs, folks. And since that Dobbs decision was directly against precedent and the will of the people, it's against the United States and its democratic principles, same as the insurrection. You've got Clarence Thomas, whose wife seems involved in the insurrection at some, if not many levels, folks. He's ruling on cases that could decide whether or not her actions, Ginny Thomas, whether or not her actions are legal or illegal, and he will not recuse himself, just not going to do it. He's tearing down the country's principles that have held for decades. Democrats want Supreme Court justices to follow a judicial code of ethics. Who ever heard of a judge who refused to submit to a code of ethics, folks? Come on now. They have them, but you know, they're in your community, they got rid of them. Oh, we have to do the same thing. You got Brett Kavanaugh, who just last week went to a Christmas party with white nationalists and far-right extremists. He's a Supreme Court justice. The party was at the home of Matt Schlapp, and Matt Schlapp is the chairman of the Conservative Political Action Coalition, CPAC, and the attendees included Stephen Miller, and you know him because you remember him from that border separating those children. And guess what? Stephen Miller right now, his group, America First Legal Foundation, that's his group. It has interest in cases pending right now before the U.S. Supreme Court. Come on, folks. And Matt Gaetz was also there, along with Sean Spicer. Matt Gaetz is one of the 7 congresspersons who many say should be investigated for his actions regarding the January 6th insurrection. Come on now. Who does the Supreme Court represent? The people or the far right and the insurrectionists? We need to know that. If the insurrection is ongoing, as many people believe, why are we not looking at the justices on the U.S. Supreme Court? We have proven that the insurrectionists have come from all levels of society. We cannot rule out the Supreme Court. They are making decisions as we have to make decisions as to who can be on the court. And if these people are not the people we deem are upholding democratic principles and should be on the court, folks, they got to go. They got to go. It's just that simple. So think about that. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Stay with me. I'll be right back with more, starting with your news. Carol Angela Davis bringing you the news from all around the neighborhood and all around the world. Welcome to the week, folks. Okay, let's begin, folks, with news from Arizona. And boy, I'll tell you that Arizona is a mess. Looking at Arizona, which is a complete mess, especially for black folks. So why is it that black families in Phoenix are constantly, under the threat of child welfare investigations? That's right, folks. That's the word from a ProPublica investigation. It found that over a 5-year period, 1 in 3 black children in Maricopa County, Arizona, faced a child welfare investigation. From 2015 to 2019, black children experienced welfare investigations of one of the highest rates in the country among large counties, folks, and nearly 3 times the rate of their white peers. You should know that. Yeah. How bad is Arizona? Well, even in terms of it being a state, even after the November 2022 midterm elections, Arizona, but if you can believe this, has just 2 black state legislators, excuse me, out of 90. Yes, you heard me correctly. 2 state legislators out of 90, folks. That's the same number it had in 1950. Now, we know that was 72 years ago. This cannot stand. We got to get busy in Arizona. But Arizona produced some very dubious people this last election cycle. All right, so we can see that the people who are in charge just need to be changed. All right, let's look at the diaspora. President Biden calling for the African Union to permanently join the G20. That's a highly influential forum for the world's most powerful economies. And right now, South Africa is the only member from the African continent, folks. But there are multiple participants from Europe, from Asia, and from the Americas. The African Union represents 55 states on the continent. Okay, it is a move that is expected to make it easier for President Biden to secure Africa's cooperation on Ukraine and climate change. African countries have long said that they often bear the worst repercussions of global events, and therefore they should be adequately represented at the talks when decisions are made. Well, I think there's not anybody who could disagree with that. All right, then let's move on. 360,000 student loan borrowers received $24 billion in forgiveness from a fix to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. That's the PSLF program. I hope you're registered. And the Biden administration says more relief is on the way, folks. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, it allows certain employees, well, I shouldn't say certain employees, it allows employees from certain nonprofit and government organizations to have their federal student loans canceled after 10 years or 120 payments. And thanks to a policy fix known as the limited PSLF waiver, close to 360,000 borrowers have now qualified for that $24 billion in loan relief, okay? And we should also tell you that the average borrower got about $67,000 in student debt cleared, and next July, if you did not register or participate in that limited PSLF program, do not despair, because you're going to get another shot at it. And to qualify for this one-time relief, you have to have direct loans. So that means you've got to have a federal family education loan, or you've got to have a federal Perkins loan. If you have those loans, you got to consolidate those loans. So let me make this clear. In order to qualify for the PSLF waiver, you need to work for a government or a nonprofit entity, and all your loans need to be consolidated into a direct loan. So if you have the federal family education loan, you have the Perkins loan, you got to consolidate those loans into a direct loan so that the government can forgive you once you make that number of payments. So you're going to have to do that, and you got to do it by May 1st, 2023. So get busy getting that done. It takes about 5 minutes. Get it done. All right, let's go to China. It's paying the price for that failed one-child policy that was in place from 1979 to 2015. Now China is facing a demographic catastrophe, folks. It's a mess over there, okay? Because they have over 1 billion citizens, so they have enough people to cover their manufacturing operations, their mining operations. They have that. But since families can only have one child, what they did was they aborted a lot of girl fetuses because they wanted a son. So about 11.9 million unborn children were aborted because they were girls. Boy, I tell you, it's tough to be a female, but we got this, okay? The result, a nation full of men. Yes, ma'am. A gender imbalance. It has created tons of problems over there in China. A lot of social instability, also violent antisocial behavior from men, sex trafficking, and plenty of men who simply cannot find a wife. Folks, it's so bad over there that China's population, its labor pool is shrinking. Its population is expected to decrease by more than 200 million people by 2060. So, those kind of policies don't work, and now they're really in trouble. And remember, they still have to take care of their elderly, and they just don't have the people to do it. All right, let's move on. Climate change is very much in play in India, folks. India has terrible, terrible heat waves and could soon experience heat waves that are beyond the human survival limit. Yeah, okay? And that comes to us from the World Bank. So severe heat waves are increasing with alarming frequency. You remember back in April 2022, an early spring heat wave brought the country to an absolute standstill, folks. Don't forget that. All right, temperatures in the capital, which is New Delhi, they topped 46 degrees Celsius or 114 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, yeah. Up to 75% of India's workforce, or 380 million people, depend on heat-exposed labor. By 2030, India may account for 34 million of the projected 80 million global job losses from heat stress, folks. That's right. And don't miss this one, because India is the third largest producer of pharmaceuticals in the world. It takes air conditioning and it takes refrigeration to create many of these drugs. Pre-COVID-19, India lost approximately 20% of temperature-sensitive medical products and 25% of vaccines all due to broken cold chains, which we know what that means. The heat stresses everything out. Electricity goes off, the cold shut, there's no cold. There goes all the scientific experience, the experiments, the drugs, everything. So we have to tackle climate change. Just do your part. Okay. We're moving on. Household wells in California, they're drying up in record numbers. We know what that's due to, the drought, and also, folks, to groundwater overpumping of underground aquifers, folks. Rural families are the hardest hit, and you should know that this year nearly 1,400 household wells have been reported dry. That's a nearly 40% increase over the same period last year, folks. It is the highest annual number reported since 2013. Areas with the highest number of well failures include Fresno, Madera, Tulare, Tehama, and Sonoma counties, all in the Central Valley, which of course is also where we grow a whole lot of food. We need our water. All right, let's move on. Jamaica's Commissioner of Police is targeting 30 U.S.-based criminals who are reportedly directing crime in Jamaica, in the United States, doing their dirty work and directing crime in Jamaica. The police commissioner says these people are influencers of crime and violence in Jamaica. They are being sought by the Jamaica Constabulary Force, which is the JCF, and both the commissioner of the JCF and the Prime Minister of Jamaica recently met with the U.S. Department of Justice, and they also met with the FBI. They're trying to help solve the problem, and the problem includes the dangers of organized crime, gangs, violence, and trafficking of illegal guns into Jamaica. So now they're taking the guns to go ruin Jamaica. Stop. All right, let's move on. Black-owned whiskey company Uncle Nearest, it honors the world's first known African-American master distiller. His name was Nearest Green. Nearest Green was a master distiller and former slave who taught Jack Daniel distilling in the 1800s. Well, now the brand is the fastest growing American whiskey, and folks, it has hit 100 million in sales. And do you know that number is expected to double in 2023? Yes. Oh, they're doing it. Just let us in. We can do it now. Just let us in. And this has been the problem. We have to kick the door down, but we're also very good at that. All right, located in Shelby, Tennessee, the award-winning whiskey company, it is family-owned, you should know it, and it's also family-operated. In 2021, the family became the best-selling Black-owned spirits brand in the United States. The company is investing in the next generation of Black distillers. It has a Black Business Booster Program, in case you're interested in being a distiller, or you know someone who is, a Black Business Booster Program. It also has the Nearest and Jack Advancement Initiative. Also, has Uncle Nearest Ventures. They're investing. Black and minority-owned businesses are also supported with professional mentorship opportunities, so check them out, okay? There you go. Get yourself going, get your business going. Do you know Barbara Johns? She was the young teen who organized a protest in 1951 that prompted a lawsuit culminating in the U.S. Supreme Court's 1954 Brown versus the Board of Education decision. And you know the decision, of course, because it's the one that outlawed racial segregation in public schools. Well, now Barbara Johns' statue is going to replace Civil War Confederate Commander Robert E. Lee's inside the U.S. Capitol. Yes, folks. Johns herself received death threats. Oh, yeah. Forcing her to finish high school out of state. She did all that and had to finish high school out of state. Also, her family's house was burned to the ground. Don't get this group twisted. These white nationalists can be very vicious, and we have to get this situation, this domestic terrorist situation, under control here in the United States. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Thanks for joining me. I've got your slave word missing. You know, I've got your financial news as well as Ask Dr. K and your international report. Stay with me. We are back with your slay word of the week, folks, and the word, because you know you got to level up that vocab and slay it all week long, folks. And the word this week is devoir, D-E-V-O-I-R. It is a noun. Its origin is in the Middle English and the Old French from the 14th century, folks. And the definition is a person's duty. Let's use it in a sentence. Had Donald Trump done his devoir as president of the United States, he may not be in the trouble he's in today, and I mean he's in trouble. All right, sentence number 2. He believes it's his devoir to feed all the stray cats on his block. Devoir, that is your slay word of the week, a person's duty. Use it all week and level up that vocab.
Anyone who thinks that slavery ended in the 1860s with the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation are grievously wrong.
If we caught a bird We ate through the feathers and ate the birds. We didn't have nothing to cook on. We didn't have no stove.
You know who you are and who we are.
We're still on that big plantation.
She was bonded to them until they died. She was their slave.
They said, bro, we're gonna be killed tonight.
Could that same white dude keep terrorists there, or Russian spies, or the KGB, and the government wouldn't know it? No.
They thought I was beat so bad that I couldn't do nothing, but I did.
Where are you? You know we're out there looking for you, and you know with the community's help, we will find you. 13-year-old Mercedes Crumpton was last seen on a Friday on the west side of Chicago, Illinois. She was spotted in the 800 block of South Keeler Avenue. Mercedes regularly wears a black dress and black furry sandals. She has a scar on her nose and wears long braids. Mercedes is 5'5". She weighs 100 pounds and has brown eyes and black hair. Please call Chicago police with any information about Mercedes Crumpton. Where are you? With the community's help, we're going to find you, and we're not going to stop looking for you until we do. Stay with me. Well, thank you so much for staying with us. This is your international report with Dr. Inyang Ebong Harstrup, and she's telling you, of course, what's going on notable to the community around the world. Welcome, Edie.
Thank you, Carol. Today, I want to talk about Joe Biden and his outreach to Africans through a partnership leadership summit in Washington, D.C. And you know that the Americans had this step back from Africa under Donald Trump, who called a number of African nations shithole countries, which didn't help anybody. So there was a step back. And even before the step back, the Chinese and the Russians have been in Africa digging, making money, investing, making money, investing. And the Americans have been pulling back. 8 years ago, Barack Obama held a leadership summit of African nations. And this, if you like, is a successor to that. And as Biden says, when Africa succeeds, the United States succeeds. And quite frankly, the whole world succeeds. So there are about 49 African nations, including the African Union, that have come to Washington to have talks about investment. And in the days that they've had, they've talked about investing $55 billion over the next 3 years. And on Wednesday, Washington announced more than $15 billion in two-way trade and investment commitments, deals and partnerships with Africa. Already companies like General Electric and Cisco Systems have found themselves in there. So what we're hoping as Africans is that having the Americans back on the continent will give us some different opportunities, because having just the Chinese has been, I think, problematic, to say the least. So it's a good thing that the Americans want to re-engage again. And this summit is a great summit.
So it's more competition, I would say. You got the Chinese, you got the Americans, you got the Russians. They got to compete. Whoever has the best deal for the Africans will be the person who prevails, the country that prevails, I would think.
Exactly. And a lot of the investment is going to go into infrastructure and sustainable energy, which are things that we desperately need. So I'm all for many more players. I definitely didn't like just the Chinese. It was not helping anybody, and it wasn't helping us. And today I was talking to a lady who was talking about the mining in Ghana and how the Chinese came and they used mercury to mine the gold, and it's destroyed the rivers, and people are getting sick with cancer. Children are being born deformed. I mean, this kind of nonsense is just unacceptable. So let's have more competition, I say.
Absolutely. And I'm just happy to see it happen. It's long overdue. And I know you'll be following that story. We can't wait to get our next update. Thank you so much, Dr. Inyang Ebong Harstrup. As you know, she's your international specialist. She has a finger on the pulse of what's happening around the world, bringing that information right to you. Thank you, Edie.
Thanks, Carol. See you next week.
See you next time, and you stay with us. We'll be right back. We got a little bit more for you.
Welcome back. We're here with your financial news. Folks, there's a bill in New York City introduced there, and it's going to ban most companies from firing workers without good reason, folks. Well, there's a shocker. Right now, most of the United States works at will, which of course means that companies can legally terminate you for almost any reason or for no reason at all. But New York City aims to change that. And if this bill passes, your boss is going to have to demonstrate misconduct, unsatisfactory performance, or a genuine economic need to eliminate your position. Okay? The city already established this right for tens of thousands of fast food workers. They did that in July 2021. Now this bill is expanding those protections to workers from retail, finance, and other sectors of the economy. There are carve-outs for construction companies and for short-term positions. Now the bill would also restrict companies' use of technology, this is a big one, folks, to surveil and assess workers' performance. Because, do you know that there are machines out there that they have software out there connected to computers where every 9 minutes they see if your eyeballs are looking at the computer? That's ridiculous. All right, let's move on. The United States' largest asset manager says it expects a recession like no other to hit the United States. I can't say it enough. Save your money and get rid of your debt. The biggest problem with your debt is the interest. Get big payments, big payments, big payments. Get rid of that stuff. Big as you can make them. Sacrifice, because a recession could come. The asset manager is BlackRock, which has $10 trillion under management. BlackRock says this recession will tip the world into a period of prolonged and heightened instability where investing approaches that once worked won't work anymore, folks. That's pretty serious. Problems that are early signs of this recession include a slowing housing market, delays in corporate investment plans, a decline in consumer savings, okay, and deteriorating CEO confidence. Well, we know that one's true because when you look at what Elon Musk has done to Twitter and what they're doing at Amazon, it's a mess. All right, let's move on. Extreme weather is an extreme problem. Terrible floods. We've talked about this. Hurricanes, unrelenting heat, drought, and massive rainfall events. Folks, it's especially bad for farmers who are very, very, very dependent on weather, okay? So this is going to affect your food and your food prices. Texas is the largest cotton producer in the United States, but guess what? This year's drought cut the harvest by at least 1/3. That's right, folks. Texas also has about 14% of the nation's beef cow herd, and cattle ranchers are sending more cows to slaughter because drought-stunted pastures simply cannot support normal calving activity. That means beef prices should be up by 2025. In Florida, Hurricane Ian blew the oranges off the trees. Today in the Florida citrus industry, guess what? Not only are hurricanes a problem, but so is standing water because it damages the root systems of those plants and trees. In California, rice farmers are in trouble due to drought, and as a result, over half the state's rice acres went unplanted. So you know they're going to try to raise the price on rice. You can also expect high prices in almonds next year because Californians' almond groves saw both an unseasonable freeze and a mega drought, folks. The United States produces 82% of the world's almonds, folks. And let me tell you, almost all of them are produced in California. That's right. In 2022, the harvest was down 11% from the year before. This year's production is expected to drop as much as 2.6 billion pounds to less than 4 million bales of almonds, folks. In an average year, they get 6 million bales. This year, they're only getting 4 million. Do the math. All right, so we know what we have to do. Everybody has to do their part, get that climate under control. And of course, we have to help our farmers, and that includes our black farmers. Let us not forget that they haven't gotten help for I don't know how long. They need some real assistance. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
I'm just sick and tired of us not spending time together lately.
I know, baby. I know. I'm sorry I haven't spent time with you. I've just been working on this big deal. It's gonna bring a lot more money to the household for it.
What you doing here, boss? Yeah, just checking to see if you still got it.
You take this work. Your partner. I don't want it back.
I've seen the movies, man. I know how this goes.
You see the movie, huh? Did you see Goodfellas? New Jack City?
Everything I do is for you. Like, I just need a little bit more time, man. Fine bullshit. Like I said, he's gonna call any second.
why don't you take a look at this video? Guess what? It's starring you.
Thanks for staying with us this week and every week on Impact News. We're closing out the show with your health in mind with Dr. K. Welcome, Dr. K.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's the dead of winter. And sometimes when the weather gets cold and you're on your whole foods, plant-based journey, your journey to health and longevity and wellness, but sometimes in the middle of the winter, you want a heavier food, but you don't want to eat meat. One of the solutions are mushrooms. Mushrooms are classified as a fungus technically, but they're in the vegetable family. They don't contain any fat, any sugar. They don't raise your cholesterol, but it's a way of adding taste and heaviness to food without salt, fat, sugar, and increasing your cholesterol. They're widely available at every supermarket. You should buy them when they look kind of dry. You don't want them to be wet. You don't want them to be moldy. And you want them stored in your refrigerator in a paper bag. Mushrooms are also wonderful because they add a lot of fiber to your diet. They add minerals to your diet, one of which is copper, and they add vitamins to your diet. Most importantly, the B vitamins, most importantly, niacin. So when you want to continue on your meat journey, it's a very cold day, you want something warm to eat, pick up mushrooms. They are wonderful. They are wonderful for your health, and enjoy.
Dr. K, real quick, we're just about out of time, but real quick, any kind of mushroom? Does it matter?
Any kind of mushroom. Yeah, they're readily available. And remember, you can cook them, but you can also eat them raw. So they're just a wonderful, wonderful source of nutrition for us humans.
Interesting. Good to know. I unfortunately like mushrooms, thank goodness. So thank you so much for bringing us this wonderful information. She's here every week, of course, trying to get you some longevity on this earth. So please pay attention. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Thank you, Dr. K.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll see you next week. And from everyone here at Impact News, we wish you a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week with more important information to push you and your family forward. Have a good week.